Welcome to Bittensor Weekly, your source of truth for everything happening in the Bittensor ecosystem. I am your host, and this is Episode 11, May 16th, 2026. Last week we previewed it. This week it shipped. Conviction is live on Bittensor Mainnet, and every subnet owner is now on a 30-day public exit clock. Also this week, Templar is officially gone. The subnet has rebranded to Teutonic, and it just kicked off the largest decentralized training run the network has ever attempted. And Grayscale quietly opened the door to a new wave of institutional TAO buyers. Let us get into it. Story 1. Conviction shipped. On May 13th, the Conviction upgrade went live on Bittensor Mainnet. This is Phase 1. Owner elections come later in Phase 2. Here's what changed at the protocol level. From May 13th forward, every emission an owner earns auto-locks the moment it arrives in their wallet. They cannot spend it immediately. When an owner decides to exit, they have to submit an unlocked transaction on-chain, and that transaction is publicly visible to every participant on the network the second it is broadcast. The unlock does not release everything at once. After roughly 30 days, 63% of the unlocked tokens become spendable. After roughly 90 days, 95% are accessible. The release follows an exponential decay curve that front-loads the larger portion. The practical effect: every alpha holder in that subnet has 30 days of advance notice before the first meaningful sell pressure arrives. The Covenant-style silent exit, where a founder sells 37,000 TAO in a single morning and then announces they are leaving, is no longer mechanically possible. Locking is open to every token holder. You can lock toward the current owner to signal support. You can also lock toward a completely different address, one you believe would run the subnet better. Phase 1 does not activate elections, but it builds the on-chain conviction record that Phase 2 will eventually read from.
Story 2. Templar is dead, Teutonic is the heir. Subnet 3 has officially rebranded from Templar to Teutonic, and on May 11th it began training an 80 billion parameter model. According to TAO Media, this is the largest decentralized AI training effort Bittensor has ever attempted, eclipsing the prior Covenant 72B run by a wide margin. We are doing a full subnet spotlight on this in a moment. Story 3. Grayscale opened the door. Grayscale's Bittensor Trust, ticker GTAO, opened for private placement this week, inviting accredited investors to participate. Per Famix News, this is the same trust that Grayscale filed an Amendment 1 to its S1 registration on back in April, formally beginning the process to convert the trust into a spot TAO ETF. The trust opening for fresh accredited capital is a quiet but important step. It deepens the institutional capital pool sitting in the regulated wrapper while the ETF application is still in front of the SEC. The market, briefly. TAO is trading at $283 as of Friday night. That is down roughly 10% from last Saturday's launch. Market cap is $2.7 billion. Circulating supply is 9.6 million TAO against a hard cap of 21 million. Staking ratio is roughly 68%. Daily emissions are 3,600 TAO post the December halving. Active subnets stand at 128. Worth noting, Conviction shipped, Teutonic began the largest training run in network history, Grayscale opened the door wider, and TAO is down 10% on the week. Sometimes good fundamentals and weak price action coexist. They almost always reconcile eventually. The question is whether this week's selling is unrelated macro turbulence or whether some holders are positioning ahead of the root APY change const teased on Thursday. We will get into that in the Alpha portfolio.
This week's spotlight goes to Teutonic, Subnet 3. First, the renaming. The subnet was operated by Covenant AI under the Templar brand for most of its history, including the Covenant 72B training run that completed in March. When Covenant founder Sam Dare exited on April 10th, he dumped roughly 37,000 TAO and publicly accused co-founder Const, also known as Jacob Steves, of running what he called decentralization theater. The subnet was rebranded Teutonic and effectively reclaimed by the broader Bittensor community. Now the comeback. On May 11th, Teutonic officially began training Teutonic-LXXX, an 80 billion parameter language model. The mechanism is what Const calls a king of the hill competition. Miners clone the current best model, train improvements on independent infrastructure, and submit checkpoints for evaluation. Validators compare submissions against the current leading model, called the king, using held-out evaluation datasets and loss-based scoring. If a challenger performs better, it becomes the new king and earns subnet rewards. Anyone can plug in compute through providers like Lium or Targon. Const summarized the design with a line worth quoting in full. "We construct the loss landscape as a market. Miners compete to win the sequence of updates which take the loss lower. That is the entire philosophy of Bittensor compressed in 18 words. You do not coordinate the training run, you incentivize it. Why this matters? This week, training a model of this size in a fully decentralized way has not been done before. If Teutonic delivers a competitive checkpoint, it validates that Bittensor can produce frontier-scale models without a centralized data center. If it does not, it raises real questions about the limits of decentralized pre-training. Either way, the next 30 days of training data are the most important the network has produced.
4 themes shaping the alpha layer this week. First, and most importantly, Const teased the next move on novelty search this week. He floated the idea of reducing or eliminating root APY, the yield holders earn for staking TAO, directly to the root network rather than to a specific subnet. The goal he described is straightforward: push capital out of passive TAO and into subnet economies. There's roughly 5.2 million TAO sitting in root right now per on-chain data shared by community account DeFi TAO. That is real liquidity. If this becomes a formal proposal, it is the natural follow-on to conviction. First, you lock subnet owners in, then you push delegators to actually pick subnets. As of this recording, it is a tease, not a proposal. No on-chain governance vote, no formal write-up. But it came from Const directly, and that means it is on the roadmap, worth tracking closely. Second, the conviction premium. Subnets where the owner is openly building locked conviction now carry a different risk profile than subnets where the owner has touched nothing. The on-chain commitment record is a new signal you should be checking before you allocate. If a subnet owner has not added any voluntary locks beyond the protocol-required auto-lock, that is worth weighing. Third, training infrastructure is back in focus. Teutonic on Subnet 3 kicking off an 80 billion parameter run is going to pull attention back to the subnets that supply compute: Lium, Targon, and a few others. If you are watching the alpha layer, watch what the compute providers do over the next 30 days. Fourth, niche subnets are shipping real partnerships. Metanova on Subnet 68 announced a partnership with OnePot.ai, a venture-backed robotic synthesis lab. Compounds identified through Metanova screening can now be physically synthesized and delivered in 5 to 7 business days. That is the kind of subnet to real-world handoff the network was always supposed to enable. Also this week, Score on Subnet 44 launched a cricket ball tracking challenge built alongside Nathan Lehman, the former head of data for the England and Wales Cricket Board. Cashion on Subnet 14 announced an AI inference optimization competition with mainnet activation expected May 19th. The ecosystem is shipping. That is it for this week. Conviction is live, Templar is dead, Teutonic is training, Grayscale is taking in institutional capital, and root APY might be next on the chopping block. And TAO is down 10% on the week despite all of it. The network is shipping faster than the price can react. That is a reason to pay closer attention, not less. If you found this useful, subscribe and hit the bell. I will see you next Saturday.